Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, may the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace and beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Wednesday night gathering to study and discuss Swami Ranganathananda's wonderful little 83-page book, Divine Grace. Divine Grace. We're well along in the book. Our reader is Swayam Prabha Tyagi. And is there anything at all left over from last week that needs to be discussed? Any comment you'd like to make from your own wisdom or experience, or any concern or question that you have about what we've read so far? All right, dears. Swam, would you kindly tell us where we are?
Sure. I think we will begin from the last paragraph on page 71. So there's some continuity going in, although we are on 72, but I think it's better to start bottom of page 71.
Okay.
In the present chapter, we have seen how the use of primitive forms of cognition is a prerequisite for many forms of creativity. We certainly do not advocate a fostering of psychopathology for the enhancement of creativity. Some people have tried to do so pharmacologically by means of alcohol, opium derivatives, and more recently by lysergic acid diethylamide. These are methods that a psychiatrist cannot recommend. In addition to the danger of addiction, their value as promoters of creativity is more than doubtful. If it is true that they facilitate the re-emergence of the primary process, they impair the use of the secondary process, and we have seen that creativity, or the tertiary process, emerges only by a harmonious matching of the two processes. Instead of resorting to toxic procedures, we must consider and possibly recommend special attitudes, habits, and environmental conditions. The first condition to be considered is aloneness. Aloneness may be viewed as a partial sensory deprivation. He has more possibility of listening to his inner self, to come in contact with his inner resources, and with some manifestation of the primary process. Unfortunately, aloneness is not advocated in our modern forms of educating adolescents. On the contrary, gregariousness and popularity are held in high esteem. Aloneness should not be confused with painful loneliness or with withdrawal or constant solitude. A second characteristic which seems to promote creativity is one which is contrary to the present spirit of American culture, inactivity. By inactivity, of course, we do not mean schizophrenic withdrawal or catatonic immobility or excessive loafing, but the allowing of periods of time during which the person is permitted to do nothing at an overt behavior level. If a person must always focus his attention on external work, he decreases the possibility of expanding his inner resources. Here again, American upbringing promotes an opposite attitude. Excessive routine activities stifle mental activity and creativity. The third characteristic is daydreaming. It is in daydream life that the individual permits himself to diverge from the usual ways and to make little excursions into irrational worlds.
Now, this daydreaming takes us into the second world. The first world is where we are focused only on the external. The second world we mainly experience as dreaming at night, but it's constantly with us. All three worlds are constantly with us, and so we this advocacy of daydreaming. Boy, do the creative people celebrate that. Wordsworth celebrated it at great length. Coleridge, many of the other poets of the Western school, and it's absolutely essential to access a kind of imagination that is not available at the first world or waking awareness level. Any comments or questions about that from your own experience?
Could we explore a little bit about what exactly is daydreaming? If it is, what normally happens when we are reading something, mind just goes from the topic on hand to so many other things. And that's generally what we consider daydreaming. But I presume that Swami is talking about something more than that.
Well, what you've described is the beginning of daydream. When you give yourself permission to simply let your mind wander aimlessly, then what happens is, because it's not focused on distractions or attractions or aversions, what happens is the right brain personality emerges. The right brain personality is nonlinear, deals in images rather than language, and is very unitary in its sense of being. It doesn't see itself as separate from anything. Jill Bolte Taylor explains this at some length and very satisfyingly, very, very well in her book, My Stroke of Insight, because she lived in her right brain awareness, her right brain personality, perforce for some time, because her left brain awareness, her normal waking awareness, was simply not available to her. daydreaming will also allow us to access uh, a level of the buddhi that is not normally available to us in our waking awareness. The buddhi is that discriminating, and it's also called the causal body. It's right next to the causal body, the bliss body, and so it can, and this is where these ecstatic utterances of the saints come from. And it is a matter of practice, like anything else, to learn how to daydream. And sometimes it'll take you the most fantastic places, as it says, irrational worlds. Worlds that just, of course, nothing like that is going to be or happen. But they're fun or just amusing or kind of astonishing. I had such an experience today. I won't go into it. It's very personal, but it happened. I got a phone call from somebody that I don't normally hear from, and my uh, daydreaming, my right brain self, just took off. It was kind of astonishing. So does that rambling itself was kind of right brainish, but did it make any sense at all, Swam?
Yes, it did. And again, because of the way the society, all societies or the globally work now, focus, I think we've lost the art of daydreaming almost. And
Oh, it's discouraged. It's discouraged when you're a child. You're being lazy, unfocused, uh, and the things that you come up with in your daydreams, like your so-called imaginary friends, they're not imaginary at all. They are simply part of your second world, and so. But the child is saying, "No, no, that's just a figment of your imagination. It's not real." Well, hui, it is too real. It's just a different kind of reality. There is more than one kind of reality. But as Hafiz complained so long ago, so many centuries ago, the modern world worships tiny gods that don't allow for this kind of expansion into our infinite potential, as David Bohm calls it. The great physicist David Bohm, that was so close to Krishnamurti, um, he calls our awareness has infinite potential, which is exactly the same thing taught by Don Juan Matus, the great Yaqui, Brujo, or yogi. So we just, there's just altogether too much restrictive, restrictiveness in our modern society because it's focused on productivity and consumption.
I don't want to make this whole class about daydreaming, but one final question. Um, it's a fine line between um, being attentive to the task at hand so we don't mess up and daydreaming. So I suppose daydreaming is it's an automatic process. I mean, it's
Daydreaming
hard.
is not task oriented.
Yeah.
That's exactly the point. It is aimless.
So should we set aside time to daydream, or I mean,
If you wish, or just when you find yourself in that state of awareness, allow yourself to go with it, unless there's something so pressing that you must not allow yourself to be in that space. Just go with it. That's what's the counsel from here. Just rather than But Einstein did indeed set aside time. Um, there are people who do set aside time. But you have to know what you're doing before setting aside time will do you any good. So you have to learn how to do it by allowing yourself to do it first, is how it would seem from here. Then once you've established that, then you can say, oh, well, let me just take 30 minutes and just allow myself to be in that space. Because it is a space. It is a different space of awareness. It is not intentional. It is not deterministic. It is, the way, this is why David Bohm was such a fan, and Einstein. It is quantum in its approach to reality, rather than being linear and deterministic. It is nonlinear and probabilistic, infinite.
Thank you.
Well,
And there's no reason not to make the whole class about daydreaming if that's what seems important. Yes, Robert. Sorry to interrupt you.
yeah, I would think creativity would be very difficult without it. But I use it a lot, and I think it's the same thing. It is referred to it now, outside the box thinking.
Yes.
You see, people, that's how people talk about it, outside the box. But
And that is a very apt metaphor, because it is indeed outside our normal sense of limitations.
Yeah.
I was hoping we'd hear from you, because I know you do use this.
Yeah, but if you didn't go there, creativity would be almost impossible, because as long as you're inside the box, you can only come up with what you know. And creativity is venturing beyond the known.
Yes.
You into the unknown.
Yes. There's as Swami pointed out, there's a fine line. But if we allow ourselves to say, what if? This is how Einstein came up with some of his theories. He said he fantasized them. He just said, what if this was so? I mean, he didn't say that to himself. That's just how his mind worked. Well, what if this is so? And turned out, time and again, all his what ifs have been proven to be correct. The general and special theories of relativity, the energy equals mass, energy and mass are the same. All of these things that he's so famous for were, he said, the result of his ability to, we're using the word daydream, he used the word fantasize. And like I say, he actively promoted it. And the reason I was hoping to hear from Robert is because I know that a musician as successful as he is in the field that he's in, which is jazz, I mean, it isn't the only thing he plays, of course, but that's where he has excelled. That's where he's made his mark. And you must be able to let yourself go. If we listen to the instructions that that fellow John Wellwood, I think his first name was John Wellwood, that Tom Carr passed along, that were at the end of Sunday's talk. It's all about letting go and being in that space of the right brain awareness and out of the box. In at least in Bavaria, where when I lived there as a child, the word for excellent, was ausgezeichnet. Ausgezeichnet means out of the box. Aus, out of, gezeichnet, the box, out of the box. Something that was excellent was out of the box. Ausgezeichnet. Ausgezeichnet. Out of the box, yes, out of our normal limitations, out of our worship of the tiny and the limited. Our worship of it is so that we can be productive and consumptive. That's what we're trained to be from children. And it is one of the great tragedies. As Aldous Huxley points out in his book Island, the first thing we should allow children to learn is the power of their imagination or daydreaming. The first thing before we try to teach them anything else, so that their creativity is engaged, not boxed. Anything else from anyone? This, I think, is very productive in our helping us understand where the Swami is taking us toward his the full understanding of what he means by divine grace.
Yeah, just to confirm what I heard Swam read, the Swami said the use of opiums and LSD for creativity was more than doubtful. Is that what the Swami had said?
Yes, because he says it limits the ability to the primary process is that creative burst. The secondary process is the ability to give it shape and form that that is communicable to others. That in art it's called, is it accessible? Is what you created accessible to others?
I would say I would agree with that. He said that one of the greatest risks is addiction as well.
Yes,
We run into that especially with musicians and jazz musicians. They're in the box and they want to get outside the box, and some of them are not able to do it at will, so they use drugs to get them there. And the drugs will get them there. I've seen it do it, but it brings along an addiction along with it that
makes them a different kind of prisoner.
Yes.
And ultimately destroys their lives.
Great. Yes. I know a lot of musicians that just, they make millions of dollars and spend it all on drugs.
Yeah. Yep. And it's not just limited to musicians.
No, it's not. But I know of people
yes, of course. Of course, there are many famous examples from the rock and roll world. Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Mama Cass, all these people, they were brilliant. But their addiction led them to self-destruction.
But it's doubtful whether they are brilliant or not.
Well,
it could be the drugs took them to a place that allowed them to create beyond the norm.
Well,
to put them in that position. And if you take the drugs away from them, they're sitting at the instrument, and some of them just can't even play at all.
Well, you have far more experience in this sort of thing than I do, Robert. So I celebrate what you said. It's altogether possible. A great Nashville producer heard a recording of very early Janis Joplin somebody presented it to him to encourage him to take her on as a producer. And his comment was, this is in Ken Burns's series on country music. The producer said, "Oh, she's brilliant. She's absolutely wonderful, but she won't last long." He was that intuitive. He could hear the whatever it was that was going to cause her to self-destruct in her voice and in the way she presented what she did. So creativity, you know, I like the way the Swami is approaching this.
You can reach those same levels with repetition.
Yes, practice, exactly. Yes.
You can reach them, but it takes a lot of practice and a long time.
Yeah, you have to be patient with yourself and with the process. And that's the truth of spiritual practice as well, which is what, of course, where the Swami is leading us.
Whether it's music or medicine, nowadays everything is AI and algorithms.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, not exactly. You know, some of the music being made that is, it's there are algorithm-based music, of course, very predictable and very boring. But there is other stuff being done, and so in any event, if you want to hear someone who is completely out of the box as a musician, just listen to Glenn Gould play. Glenn, Gould. It's just astounding. And he did not do it with drugs. He did it with relentless practice and tuning his whole body till his whole body was just music itself.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
I just want to comment this. I think divine grace we feel and acknowledge by going out of the box, isn't it? I feel that way. When I go into, after years of practice of meditation, we start feeling the divine grace
Yes.
by going out of the box. And it's a dream, we are dreaming. And we feel it, we acknowledge it.
Yes.
That's it. I think
it's because we have sunk beneath the limitations of the box, which is our left brain awareness and everything associated with it, and have found our way to that right brain awareness, which is nonlinear and probabilistic rather than and blissful.
Yes, very peaceful, and we feel that divine grace.
And
Thank you.
And that is indeed divine grace. Anything else from anyone? All right, Swayam, please read on.
Okay. Another requirement for the creative person is even more difficult to accept: gullibility. This word is used here to mean the willingness to accept, at least temporarily or until proved wrong, that there are certain underlying orderly arrangements in everything outside us and inside us. Creativity often implies the discovery of these underlying orderly arrangements more than the inventing of new things. Alertness and discipline are other requirements.
And just as Robert was earlier pointing out.
Although they are necessary prerequisites for productivity in general, they acquire a particular aspect in creativity. Many would-be creative persons, especially in the artistic fields, would like to believe that only such qualities as imagination, inspiration, intuition, and talent are important. They are reluctant to submit themselves to the rigor of learning techniques, discipline, or logical thinking, on the pretext that all these things would stultify their creativity.
Which is, of course, as Robert was pointing out to us earlier, exactly the opposite of the case. Finally, we learn to be outside the box because we have mastered the box.
A humorous remark, which has by now become commonplace, but in which there is a great deal of metaphorical truth, is that creativity is 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration.
This was said by Thomas Edison, by the way. I think he's the one who coined that phrase. That, because he was created, he was credited with creating so many things, and he did. And so, as he said, it's 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration. Anything else from anyone on that particular aspect? If you study Edison's invention of the electric light bulb, for instance, you'll find that he was relentless. He understood the principle of what he was trying to do. He needed to find the materials and the techniques by which it could be done. And it was a laborious, rigorous, scientific process that went on for a long time. I don't remember how long, I knew once. But in any event, it went on for a long time. And finally, he perfected the electric light bulb. He was the inventor of the electric light bulb. And the inspiration was he understood the principle. A glowing filament, in a vacuum, would last for a long time. It would glow but not burn up because there wasn't oxygen to feed the burning process. So he understood the principle, but it took him a long time and much experimentation before he came up with the materials and the techniques that would allow the electric light bulb.
I think Nikola Tesla and Steve Jobs were also very creative inventors. Did they ever say anything about creativity and what was their source?
Oh yes, well just read the biography of Steve Jobs. Read the biographies of Nikola Tesla. Yes, Nikola Tesla invented the alternating current generator and motor. This came to him in a vision. I don't remember what city. I think it was Vienna.
The vision, interesting. I'm wondering if that was before or after he met Swami Vivekananda, because everybody.
It was much before, many years before, many years before, probably 20, 25 years before. He was still living in Europe. He met Vivekananda in New York City. This took place. He was sitting. He used to go and daydream at evening. He didn't meditate precisely, but he did just allow his mind to go free, facing the sunset. And he would do it on a park bench, and he did it pretty much day and every day, whether it was warm or cold. I don't know if it was rainy, but in any event, there he was one evening, just gazing into the sunset, and suddenly his consciousness shifted, and he saw the alternating current motor working. He saw it in his vision. And what he did is he bench tested it in his mind. So disciplined was his mind that he, so as you know, inventions have to be tested before they are copied or made more than one of. So he bench tested it in his mind and came to understand all of the parts of it. Then he had different fabricators in that city make the various parts. And in his small apartment, he created the first alternating current motor. Of course, alternating current required a generator, but a generator is just the kind of the obverse of a motor. Instead of using the energy created, it creates the energy. So he came up with all of this. At that time, direct current was the only kind of current that was available. He first took his invention to the electric, one of the most advanced cities for electricity at that time was Paris, France. He took his invention and his drawings and his working model. As I say, he created the working model of the dynamo, as he called it, the generator, and the motor, and he took them to the electric utility of Paris, France, and they just blew him off. They said, "Nah, this can't work," even though he showed them it did work. So that's when he immigrated to New York and began to work there and create the things and study electricity the way he did. That's a little bit of the story of Nikola Tesla. But if you want to read an amazing, amazing story, read the biographies of Tesla. There are several really good ones. I don't remember the authors anymore. But he daydreamed. He sat daydreaming each evening. He invented many, many things. Anything else from anyone? Thank you, Brahmadas. Anything more from you? Apparently not. Okay. And Steve Jobs, by the way, you can read his biography and you find that he is indeed creativity and was very much as his mantra was, think different. Not differently, think different. Something entirely new, different, not like anything else. And of course, that's what Apple came up with time after time after time.
Well, I'd like to share something that, as you know, I've lived in New York for 40 years, and as a musician, you know, some of the direct current circuitry still exists
Yes.
today in some of the older buildings in New York. One of the theaters that I used to work in had the whole direct current circuitry there in place. I don't think there was any current running through them, but they're still there.
Yeah, well, there isn't any direct current generator anymore.
No.
The limitation of direct current was that it could only be transmitted for 12 miles.
Right, it would die down before yeah, it couldn't travel great distances.
Yeah, alternating current, however, can be transmitted over great distances.
Right.
It's interesting that the direct current circuitry was still there.
Yeah, so it had, instead of wires, there were plates that were this wide.
Yeah.
And they had the switches, big handles that you would pull, and it would come down and connect to allow the current to pass through.
Yeah, you can see some simulations of this in the old Frankenstein movie.
Yeah.
Where they have the great big handles with it, they pull down and connect these plates, and the current passes through, and
Yes.
so Edison was a great proponent of direct current and an enemy of alternating current. Ian Westinghouse. Anything else from anyone? Well, I think this is exactly what the Swami intended us to do, and we're doing the manana on this, digesting it, is really, where are the examples? How do we understand this as it is played out in the world as we know it and understand it? And as you said, Swayam, right now, because everything is monetized, everything revolves around whether it creates wealth. So everything is directed toward productivity and consumption. And so naturally, it is, as you said, it's all algorithms. Anything else from anyone? So read this last little bit again, would you please?
Sure. Alertness and discipline are other requirements. Although they are necessary prerequisites for productivity in general, they acquire a particular aspect in creativity. Many would-be creative persons, especially in the artistic fields, would like to believe that only such qualities as imagination, inspiration, intuition, and talent are important. They are reluctant to submit themselves to the rigor of learning techniques, discipline, or logical thinking, on the pretext that all these things would stultify their creativity. A humorous remark, which has by now become commonplace, but in which there is a great deal of metaphorical truth, is that creativity is 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration. And that's the end of section 22,
Okay,
which
very
was,
good. There's plenty of time to take up the next section.
right.
But I think he deliberately ended this with this call to us, this invitation to consider that we must be willing to work hard, to practice, to do those things that are the perspiration part before we can actualize the inspiration. Mhm. And so finally, this yields a Mozart that all that work seems to have gone on in many prior lifetimes. He was a child prodigy. He was composing by the time he was age 6, but and later on, as is portrayed in the film Amadeus, he makes the remark that what he can get down in paper, what he can show as the compositions that he writes, is only a fraction of what he is hearing. There's much more there, if you can imagine. Well, yes, of course, we can imagine, because he's finally broken through that barrier of the box and is tapped into the infinite creativity of the universe. Anything else from anyone? Okay, please go ahead, Swam.
So now it's section 23. Subheading is the struggle to become grace worthy.
The struggle to become graceworthy. Yes.
All these steps outlined by Silvano Arietti to foster creativity already form integral parts of meditation and other sadhanas or spiritual practices, of the dynamic spirituality, of the science of religion, the science of spiritual growth of man, as contrasted with the static and formal piety of all ethnical religions. In life, generally, and in spiritual life particularly, Sri Ramakrishna refers to the need on the part of the seeker to strive to obtain the grace not only of God, but also of one's own mind. To emphasize this, and it needs much emphasis, he used to recite a familiar saying of the Bengal Vaishnava tradition. The grace of the three, namely Guru, Krishna, God, and fellow devotees, have I amply received. But for not obtaining the grace of one's own mind, my life has gone to dogs. So, when you build up,
Would you repeat that saying of Sri Ramakrishna's, please, dear?
sure, the grace of the three, namely Guru, Krishna, God, and fellow devotees, have I amply received. But for not obtaining the grace of one's own mind, my life has gone to dogs.
So, as long as we don't do what's necessary to train our mind, we can have these three graces that he's mentioned. Of the teacher, of the divine being itself, and the Sangha, the fellow devotees. All of that. If you haven't mastered your own mind, then, and this of course is the constant refrain in the Bhagavad Gita, you must gain mastery of your mind. You must learn to practice meditation. Any comments or questions from anyone? Okay, dear, please read on.
So, when you build up your strength of individuality and self reliance and character strength from your young days, you are already catching the wind of grace, and you are getting steadily stronger and purer to appreciate it and benefit from it. And you become strongest when you surrender all your strength to that great breeze of God that blows all the time. For He
Wait,
alone is.
you said God. He says grace.
Let me read it again.
To
And
that
you,
great breeze of grace.
and you become strongest when you surrender all your strength to that great breeze of grace that blows all the time. For He alone is. We are only just a spark of that divine fire.
Now let's just stop right there and meditate. Do our manana on. He alone is. We are only just a spark of that divine fire. Now that doesn't mean that we're insignificant. The fire exists to create its sparks. that divine fire exists to create its sparks. But without the fire, there are no sparks. So he alone is. The fire is, and we as sparks are part of that fire. We are one with the fire, and then we, as sparks fly out of the fire, we fly out of the fire into manifestation, and we do what it is that we do while the spark is alive, and then, of course, the spark goes out. But then there will be another spark and another spark and another spark as long as the fire is burning. He alone is, and we exist by that grace. Are there any comments or questions on that? Is there anything that seems that needs clarification?
I'll have something.
Yes, please, Robert.
It's going to move back to what you read before about meditation and mastering the mind. I think some people think that meditation is mastering the mind, but my experience, meditation is a tool that can lead to mastering the mind.
Yes.
And other things as well. But because you're able to meditate does not necessarily mean that you've mastered the mind.
No, exactly.
So we can't use mastering the mind and meditation as the same thing interchangeably, which it seemed like we were doing earlier.
Okay, if I did say it in that way, Robert, and I'm completely able to believe I did. It's just meditation is the sine qua non, without which not. Unless we turn inside and learn to plumb our inner depths and move away from our attachment to external reality, then this grace remains ever unavailable to us. Now, mastering the mind really means being able to sink below it. The mind goes on. This is what Patanjali points out. You know, when you do your pratyahara, and you no longer allow yourself to be drawn to the external sense world or to the reflection or memories of that external sense world that exists in the mind, you sink below it into concentration on whatever it is that you're concentrating on. And it needs to be something, of course, that is productive for you. Otherwise, it will become a trap. I don't want to start a lecture on Patanjali, but the point is that it is the mastery of the mind means not allowing yourself, discriminating against those things that keep you entrapped in the mind until you're able to sink below them by concentrating on something else. In our tradition, the Ramakrishna order tradition, typically that is a mantra, though it's not the only way to do it by clearly.
I have found that most people, the first stage of understanding it is most people think that they are the mind.
Yes.
And the first step is to get them to see that they are not the mind.
Yes.
The mind is something separate from them. And once that has been learned or established, then you can go forth from there to the next step. but that seems to be the greatest hurdle.
You're absolutely right. I am not the body. I am not the mind.
Right.
You're right.
We,
Those
we,
those are the two primary hurdles.
I think we have to remind ourselves every now and then in the meditation that I'm not the body, I'm not the mind. I am the Brahman. I am the Brahman.
Whose music is that that's playing?
Oh, that's my phone. That's my phone. I'm sorry.
You're not muted, Robert. So we're hearing your phone.
Brother Shankara, I think we have to remind ourselves every now and then in the meditation, I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I am the Brahman. And continue to do the yama, niyama, all these other things. Meditation is only like, I totally agree with Robert. Meditation is only just a step towards it, towards the really inviting grace or grace inviting me.
Yes.
That's how I feel it. I
Yes.
totally agree with him. Totally agree with him. I know people who has been saying to me they have been meditating for 20 years, 15 years. Nothing happened. Negative attitude is still there, and all sorts of stuff is bothering them, and they haven't gone to the next steps. They haven't gone to the next steps.
But it's because they haven't followed their guru's instructions.
They're not there yet. Yes, they are not following all the steps of the yoga, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and
That's why these workbooks exist.
Exactly. Thank you, brother.
So, anything more from you, Robert?
Well, that was the first level, I think, that you need to accomplish. And once they get that, then if you can show them that I tell them, you're either master of the mind or the mind is a master of you. Yes. If you're following the mind's instructions, then the mind is the master.
Yes.
Yes, I agree.
And if you can get them to see that, then you can really move. You can start to move rapidly after that.
Well, they have to understand what it is that they're not. Then they have to understand what it is that they are.
Yes.
And, one way of saying that is the witness. That word has been used in this book. It is a very prevalent word in the Bhagavad Gita. It is that which is the knower. The field of action, the body and the mind, is something that the knower does in order to know it. And as Swami Sarvapriyananda said, when asked why would it do that, his answer was simply because it can.
Yeah.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
A couple of comments. One is, this is where when we try to disconnect ourselves from the mind and bodies, where logical reasoning comes in handy, whether it is the teachings from scriptures or modern science. We can take step by step how we are not what we see or hear or touch or taste or smell or think. So I think because it's automatic to get connected, but when we actually reason out and put that distance, then I think over time, hopefully that distance will become more automatic. And the second thing I wanted to say was Sri Ramakrishna's metaphor he used to use, that you take one thorn to take out another and then throw both away.
Yes. And what you said about the logic and the reasoning, that is the apt way, the auspicious way to do it for a certain kind of mind. Other kinds of minds take it on faith. And they don't try to reason it out. They simply say, well, all of these saints say this is the case. I'm going to go with that. these saints, these avatars, these incarnations, they all say this. So rather than me trying to figure it out, I'm going to take it on faith. Now, I can speak from personal experience about this. It was the trying to figure it out because of the kind of mind I have. I'm not saying that I'm the general run of them. Everyone is individual. But, the way my mind worked is I read so many different things, and I was trying to figure out what's true, what's not, da, 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 da. So finally, I just said, I need a teacher. I need someone I can go to, and I can have faith in that teacher. And the teacher will tell me what's what. And then I'll be able to have faith in that and do it and achieve the results. And by the grace, that's what happened. Swami Prabhavananda drew me to him. So then I was able to do what I just said. Stop reasoning about it, begin listening to what he said was the truth, and practicing as if that were true, that tentative faith. Because I just was going around in circles trying to reason it out for myself. But some people, and I suspect you are one, Swayam, have that capacity. They have that ability. This is why Swami Vivekananda said, we do this by work or worship or psychic control or philosophy. One or more or all four of these, and be free. So we have to discover the way that we have to discover what kind of mind we have, and we have to practice using that. This is what the Swami is talking about in the earlier part of this book, building yourself up and building your mental strength, your character strength, your strength in the world, your mastery of the world, so that you're not behind the eight ball. You learn how to play the game of life, and then something else happens. And what happens will be in tune with and appropriate to the kind of mind that you have.
Of course, my go-to is the faith. When my mind is tired of all the reasoning and still doesn't get it, faith is what sustains.
This is why we have gurus.
Two things. The first thing is, it's never going to become automatic.
Oh no!
And that's, you see, when you leave it to become automatic, that's when you recede back to where you were. It's a job that you cannot ever retire from. You have to stay on top of this thing.
Yes, and
24/7.
You're 24/7, 365. You're absolutely
okay.
Right.
Yes.
The second thing. The second thing is, we all know right from wrong. It says someplace in the Bible that Christ said when he was leaving the disciples, told me I was leaving them now, but he was going to leave when with someone that was going to correct them and let them know where they should go. He left some part of the mind that says to you, anytime you're getting ready to do something wrong, it'll say to you, you're getting ready to do something wrong. Yep. And either we will listen to that or we'll give ourselves some reasons why we can do it anyway.
Yeah.
And
that voice you're talking about, Robert, is the Buddhi. And we get taught as children not to listen to that voice. We get taught by parents who are deceptive toward one another, and all kinds of people and all kinds of practices in society. Don't listen to that voice that says you're about to do something wrong. And it is a great tragedy. And it is part of this terrible time we're living in. It has not always been so, but the embodiment of the avatars, we have the examples of Rama and Krishna to give us these. Anyway, but Robert, I agree with you entirely. I agree with you 100%. And I think that Jaime was about to agree with you also.
Oh, yes, I totally agree with him, what he said, and you said, Brother Shankara. You both are just 100% correct in my opinion. In my opinion.
Well, this is why we're chewing on this.
Exactly.
Anything else from anyone?
Meditation is a lifetime of thing. Yeah,
Yes.
lifetime thing. It's not like you do it 2 months and 2 years, 3 years, and then, okay, I got the grace and then I'm done and I move on. No, it's just a daily, like you breathe. It's like you're breathing, almost like you're breathing until we die.
Yes, dear. And if you want to understand in a philosophical sense what it is that Robert just said, just read the last 2 chapters of Adi Shankaracharya's Vivekachudamani about how even the illumined soul, one whose mind has been dissolved in the ocean of consciousness, but somehow recreates itself to move on, usually to be a teacher. But even those people must be on the job, as Robert pointed out, 24/7.
Exactly.
They cannot relent, because Krishna says, if you relent, he says it in chapter 4, he says, if you relent, you'll get sucked back into, as I think Robert used the word recede.
All these gunas, Rajaguna and all these tamagunas will take over you, because that's our goal, is not to let them take over us. We take over them. We surrender to belief and faith and higher power. That's how we don't let the gunas rule us. And then the ego subsides, and then we don't let the ego rule over us. We want to take the ego. We want to be able to control that ego, good ripened ego and unripened ego. That's the power we get it through regular practices and doing yama, niyama, and all other things, everything together, doing the meditation, and we move step by step, and suddenly it happens to us, and we need to continue, like Robert said and you said. Totally agree with you both.
Yes. And we need to remember that the things that we are not are the creation of the gunas. The body and the mind are the creation of the gunas. And so when Jaime was saying we have to conquer the gunas.
Conquer the gunas.
Well, the way we really do this is to simply say no to them.
No to them, exactly.
It's as Vashishta says to Rama, just ignore it. Just ignore it. So anyway, we'll hear more from what the Swami says again next week. We're heading into the holiday season, so we'll let you know each week whether there's going to be a class the following week. Next week, I don't see any impediment to it. Today is the 7th, the 14th. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't have a class. So as we get toward the end of the month, things may get more complicated. But let's start again, Swayam, with reading from the beginning of section 23.
Sure.
We start next week. Anything else from anyone, dears? All right. Om Hari Om. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya. Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma Amrutangamaya Abir Moiti. O dearly beloved, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from this realm of endless noise and relentless confusion to thine abode of silence, serenity, clarity, and peace. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through, light us through and through with thy everlasting, shining presence. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace and beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe, may we be healthy, may we be cheerful, may we have peace of mind, and may we be always in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. Any final thought from anyone? Any other thoughts? All right, dear. Good to see you, Michele. Good to see you with us this evening. So, any final thoughts? Well, the happiest of holy days. We're in that season. On the 18th, we'll celebrate Holy Mother's birthday. And we're going to do that with an informal worship, one patterned on the Mother's way of worship herself, not a tantric puja. She didn't do those. We're going to worship her in the way that she used to worship the Master. Very simply, very straightforwardly, none of the tantric mantras and so on. And then on the 24th, we will have our Christmas Eve service, our Christmas Eve worship of Lord Jesus Christ. And again, that will be a very simple, straightforward, non-tantric worship, which is what we've done every year. So those are the two highlights of the end of this year. The Holy Mother's birthday celebration on the 18th, and then Christmas Eve on the 24th. And then, of course, there's Kalpataru Day on January 1st. Those will all be celebrated in the chapel. They'll be Zoomed for people who either choose not to come or can't come. And like Michele is in Arizona, it'd be very difficult for her to participate physically. So, anything else from anyone before we close? All right, dears. So lovely to be with you as always. This is just so uplifting. It's just, this is where the heart finds its joy. So, great good night to you. And may you
Good night, all.
may you dream somewhere over the rainbow.